Hey everybody, I'm Scott Wikle. You're listening to My Kind of Country. My guest tonight has been a disc jockey, a manager, a producer, a promoter, and a cowboy. A lot of folks will know him from his many, many years as a game show host, but he has had a very interesting career in the field of country music and other music as well. And that's mainly what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm really excited to have him on the show. It's an honor to welcome an American icon, Bob Eubanks, to My Kind of Country. Bob, how are you tonight?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you, man?
Well, I'm great, but I got to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous. You're the expert here, and I'm a little bit nervous at doing an interview with you.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are you wearing a mask?
I am not wearing a mask right now.
Oh, well, bye.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I'll put my mask on.
Can you believe this? You walk into a bank with a mask on, and you walk out with money, and nobody arrests you.
I know. You know, I want so bad to put on like a toy holster and belt, and walk in like Woody from Toy Story or something to the bank.
There you go.
Well, before we dive into the fabulous world of promoting and managing and all that kind of stuff, a lot of folks may not know that you actually did some recordings early in your career.
Yeah, real bad, though.
Well, I love the name because it was Bob Eubanks and the Nico Teens. And you had a 45 on the Goliath label, and it was Keep It Burning, and then the Tex Williams song, Smoke, Smoke, Smoke That Cigarette. I noticed a theme there.
Somebody should have psychoanalyzed me, for God's sakes. I got to say something. God did not tune me. I just want you to know that.
So was it your original intent to kind of get into that part of the music business, or did you always have aspirations to be?
I don't know. I was just having a good time of doing the things I was doing, and I didn't have any intent to do anything. But I did discover some things. Number one, I can't act, and number two, I can't sing. So other than that, I've had a good time.
That's great. That's great. Well, how did you get into the disc jockey world? I know that you were a disc jockey for quite some time as your career began, and you started out in Oxnard on KACY, and then you were later on KRLA radio.
Yeah, I from the time I was in the 8th grade, I wanted to be a disc jockey. I don't know why. Either a cowboy or a disc jockey. Roy Rogers and Gene Autry were the two most important people in my world, except for my parents. And but I wanted to be a disc jockey. So when I got out of college, no, take it back. When I went into college to take radio, I found out that the professor, the only thing she knew about radio, she had a friend who had a cooking show. So I got out of there and I went into a radio school in Hollywood, the Don Martin School of Radio and Television. And I was there with the guys that have just come out of the Korean War, these big, deep voice guys, And but anyway, I learned a great deal there. And then my first job was at a little station in Oxnard, a 250 watt. 200 watts went into the ocean, and 50 watts went to the cemetery next door. And I was working midnight to 8 in the morning. I even had a record giveaway contest one time, and nobody called. So as fate would have it, and God only knows how it happened, but my next job was at the hot new rock and roll station in L.A., KRLA. And I was there with the big guys, man. I was there with Casey Kasem out of Detroit and Dick Biondi from Chicago and Wink Martindale from Memphis, and me, the little twerp Bob Eubanks from Oxnard. And I realized then that I'd better do something to make myself important. So I opened a nightclub, a young adult nightclub, 18 to 25, no booze. And it was there that I started buying talent. And that's what led up to the Beatles and the Stones and all of that. I'm a tough interview, aren't I?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. Well, you have the distinction of being the only living person that booked the Beatles when they were here in the United States. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm the only living person to have booked a Beatle concert. I did the Hollywood Bowl for 2 years, 64, 65, and then we played Dodger Stadium in 66.
That is incredible. I know this is a country show, but you got to tell me a little bit about working with the Beatles.
Oh, boy. Well, first year they were they were wide-eyed and inquisitive, and McCartney wanted to meet Jane Mansfield, and the second year they were tired, and they all they heard was screaming and yelling. But the second year they went over to Elvis's house. That was a funny bit. In fact, they went over to Elvis's house, and their manager and Elvis's manager had a meeting that was like, Larry the Cable Guy meeting Albert Einstein. But they had a meeting over there with Elvis, and Paul found something he'd never seen before. He found this little black instrument that if you hold it up, you can change the channel on a TV. And he was mesmerized by that. He'd never seen that before. But anyway, and then in '66, when they came in, it was a band that no longer wanted to be together. Lennon had made the comment, we're more popular than Jesus Christ, and there was all kinds of trouble. And the Dodger Stadium concert was the second to the last time they ever appeared for money. And it was a strange time, to say the least.
Well, you took a pretty big risk to book them over here the first time, right?
First time, yeah. They wanted Brian Epstein, their manager, told the agency GAC. He says, whatever venue we play, I want twice that anybody else has ever received. So they wanted to play the Hollywood Bowl, and the concert promoter that did a lot of dates at the Hollywood Bowl, he was used to buying Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra for $12,000. And so when these long-haired guys from England wanted $25,000, he turned them down. So I stepped up, and I didn't have $25,000, good God, but I borrowed it on my house.
Wow.
And it was quite a night. I had two partners. I made a grand total of $1,200, and a lot of agony. But I got real smart the second and third year because the Beatles made KRLA number one. And so I said, you know what? Let's say KRLA and Bob Eubanks present the Beatles. And on the second and third year, I made more money than the Beatles did.
That's great. Folks, you could go to BobEubanks.com. Bob, you also have a show that you do about the Beatles that you go out on the road with, right?
Yeah, I do. It's called Backstage with the Beatles. I tell never-before-heard stories that lead up to music. I have a Beatle band on stage with me, and it's a lot of fun. But as you know, we can't do anything right now. It involves an audience, so
that's
I'm
for
just
sure.
Sitting at home.
That's for sure. Well, folks, in the meantime, you can get Bob's book. It's called It's in the Book, Bob, and that's available at BobEubanks.com. And you can read more about his stellar career. We're just going to scratch the surface today, but some very interesting stories. And Bob, in the rock and roll world, you also worked with the Beach Boys and the Everly Brothers and Bob Dylan, Elton John. My daughter is a big Beach Boys fan. Love the Beach Boys.
And Rolling Stones, I did the Stones for 2 years. First time I was with the Rolling Stones, I paid them $4,500, and the second time I paid them $20,000. But they were difficult. Jagger was difficult. I loved their music, but they were difficult. And but I did Herman and the Hermits and the Dave Clark Five. And I'll tell you a story about Herman and the Hermits. I had to buy an opening act that I didn't want to buy because they were too expensive. So this is Anaheim Convention Center. So I walk into the dressing room of the opening act, and here are some underage girls. And I said, whoa, ouch, ouch. And so took those girls out. Pretty soon I see the drummer of the opening act pulling his bass drum case in, and it's making grooves in the floor. I walk up to him, I kick the top off, and there's a little girl curled up in the bass drum.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, you guys will never work for me again. He said, you wanker, you're right. We won't work for you. That was Keith Moon of The Who, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. They never worked for me again either.
You can't write fiction stranger than that,
I know, yeah.
That's crazy. Well, some years ago, I watched you were hosting a show on TNN called Primetime Country, and you did a whole entire show on Merle Haggard, and George Jones came out, Ralph Emery, and I learned a lot from that show about your time with Merle Haggard, and I'd like to ask you how you came to know Merle and how you went to work for him.
Sure. In 1969, the whole drug culture from San Francisco was coming in to the rock and roll world, and I didn't want to be involved in it. So I sold my company and stayed out of the business. And in 1972, I just, I was raised with country music. And so I went to Capitol Records and I said, who do you have on your label that you think is going to be a huge star? And I didn't even get it out of my mouth. The guy said, Merle Haggard. So I drove up to Bakersfield and I met with Hag and his manager, Fuzzy Owen. And I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to be their exclusive promoter so they would know they got the same kind of promotion everywhere they went. And they liked the idea. And so we agreed. And we never had a contract, but Merle was amazing. He and I, in 10 years, never had a cross word. We had some fun times, we had some bad times, but we had a great respect for each other. So I assigned them to an exclusive concert promotion career. And that way they knew that when they walked into the dressing room, there would be the food they liked, when the crowds would be there, and security, all of that. I just gave them consistency. And that's how it all started. But he, before I die, I would love to do his movie, God, because here's a man, as you probably know, he was raised in a boxcar, escaped from 13 institutions by the time he was 18, spent 2 years and 9 months in San Quentin, lived in every hobo jungle in the country, and in 1971 he became Entertainer of the Year, and I took him to the White House in 1972. It's a wonderful story.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I wanted to ask you about the White House concert, that whole experience. And that was at an interesting time, too. And Nick, the Watergate thing was just kind of developing at that time, right?
Yes, it was. In fact, I was having lunch with the president's secretary, press agent, Stephen Bull. And he said, you'll have to excuse me, but I have a meeting with the president. We have a very important meeting. And that was the infamous Watergate meeting. And, but, we were treated very well. It was funny watching Henry Kissinger clap off time to Okie from Muskogee. I had the Osborne brothers with me, and they got the White House got to approve every song, and I submitted Ruby, and they thought it was the Kenny Rogers "Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town," and they didn't want him to sing that, but I told them, no, it's Ruby, Ruby, honey, are you mad at your man? And so they approved it. So it was the Osborne brothers and Merle Haggard, and we had a good time.
Wow, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. I've seen footage of that before, and that's and of course Merle went on to play. I know he played for Jimmy Carter, and he played at Ronald Reagan's ranch, and several presidents over the years. Yeah, that's amazing. Now you, I believe Carlton Haney was booking Merle previous to you, and I know that he did a lot of interesting moves in his career, and of course he was booking a lot of package shows too.
Yes, he was, and he booked a lot of package shows, and one of my favorite stories is that Jerry Lee Lewis was on the stage, and they were about to run over midnight. It was going to cost Carlton a lot of money, so he kept going, Jerry, get off the stage, Jerry. And Jerry just kept playing. Carlton took a chair and hit him in the back of the head. And I told you, Jerry, I told you. Then one time with Carlton, and he was a funny guy, he says, now, I will introduce Merle Haggard. I said, no, I introduce Hag. He said, it's my show. I introduce him. I said, okay, but you have to say what I tell you to say. He said, I'll do it. I said, you say, ladies and gentlemen, the poet of the common man, Merle Haggard. He said, I got it. He gets up there and he said, well, here he is, the poor and common man, Merle Haggard.
That's great. He had a very thick accent too. I guess it was probably was he from Georgia?
One day we played, and nobody showed up. He said he forgot to advertise that one.
Oh Lord. Booking Merle Haggard, it must have been quite interesting during that time, as he was so popular. But Merle had a tendency to kind of get off on a certain kick with his music. You know, he would get into the Western swing thing. I know for a time he was really into the Dixieland stuff. And was that kind of difficult in some of the venues that you played with the kind of music he was doing?
Yeah, he was Bob Wills for a long time, you know. And he taught himself to play the fiddle. And I got to tell you, if you're riding in a bus with someone who's teaching themselves to play the fiddle, you don't sleep very well. And but he became other people. And I kept saying to him, Merle, they want to see Merle Haggard, you know. But he liked to do the Bob Wills thing, and he liked to imitate people. He was a great imitator. He could imitate almost anybody. But I'll tell you a story. One time in Austin, I think it was Austin, Texas. This is a long time ago, so forgive me. And before the concert, he got a written death threat. And so he came to me and he said, I want a stool out on the stage. I said, okay. I look out on the stage, and there he is, and the stool, and on the stool was a loaded gun. And I remember him saying, somebody sent me a death threat. Okay, pal, come on. It's your turn. And I just thought it was, whoa, God, that's spooky.
Wow. Well, there was a lot of upheaval at that time, and I know that he took a lot of flack for Okie from Muskogee. And and then he came out with the fighting side of me. So he was definitely opinionated and in your face with that kind of stuff. But it seems like everybody from the rednecks to the rich just loved his music.
They really did, and he was amazing. As a human being, oftentimes, I won't say a failure, but oftentimes a problem. As a performer, he was an absolute genius. I mean, his second wife was the bridesmaid at his third wedding.
And Miss Bonnie Owens, what a jewel she was. Sweet lady. Sweet,
wonderful angel. Helped him write most of his hits, I will tell you that. I'd had a meeting with him one time at the Holiday Inn in Hollywood. And we're talking about the dates coming up and everything. And he said, oh, Bob, stop just a minute. Bonnie, come with me. And they walked into the bathroom. Pretty soon he comes out and he says, I've had this darn melody in my head all day. They went in there and they wrote Everybody Gets the Blues Sometimes.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. Did you and Merle stay in touch in later years as he was getting older?
Yes, we did, but his wife didn't like me at all. And you see, Merle and I had an agreement that we could tell each other anything and it wouldn't go anywhere. And I guess she found out about that, but she was very jealous of me and my relationship. She didn't even invite me to his funeral, and I was heartbroken about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we stayed in touch to a certain degree, and I went to him because I wanted to produce his movie, and he gave me permission and gave me the rights to the movie for a while. But it was difficult with his current wife, and his older children had problems there too. So it was kind of sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you also booked a lot of great, spectacular country shows in the 70s, and I know that you worked with Marty Robbins, with George and Tammy, Barbara Mandrell, Dolly Parton, and I was given a copy of a concert that Freddie Hart did in 1974 that you introduced. It was a country music spectacular, and I think that Jones and Wynette. I hope you got the copy of that I sent you, by the way.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much for that. Yeah,
absolutely. But that was kind of how it came to mind to get in touch with you, and I want to thank you publicly for responding to me and taking time to do this interview, because you have so many great stories that are such an important part of country music history.
Well, country music was my favorite. I enjoyed the rock and roll world, but I love the country music. And what I did is I took my rock and roll experiences into the country world. I put food in the dressing rooms. I gave them security whenever they got into town. I did the things that the other concert promoters in country were not doing at all. And that really helped me.
Sure, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about George Jones and Tammy Wynette.
Well, my favorite, first of all, George Jones gave me a Martin D35 guitar. And because I wanted one of his guitars. I was a big George Jones fan. But he wouldn't give me the case, so I had to buy a ticket for it on the airplane and get it home. But I know you know this story, and maybe your audience does too, but my favorite Jones story is that when they took his license and this car away from him for drinking, that they arrested him on the turnpike on his lawnmower, going to town to get a drink, and I thought that was hilarious.
I mentioned Marty Robbins earlier too. Marty also had an affection for staying on stage and making things run late. Did you ever run into that with working with Marty Robbins?
No, I know he had that little issue at the Grand Ole Opry, and I know he'd run over, and Ernest Tubbs' record shop would get wiped that night. But Marty was a strange fellow. He was a wonderful performer. But he would open for Haggard and do a great job. But in the 2 years that I worked with Marty, I was never, ever on his bus. He would come in and do the show and then open half the show and then take off. And he and Merle seldom talked. And I remember one time we were at the Hollywood Bowl, and Haggard came to me and he said, "Would you ask Marty if he will sing a duet with me?" I said, "Sure." So I go into the dressing room and I said, "Marty, Haggard would love it if you sing a duet with him." And he says, "Nah, I don't want to do that." And I said, "Okay, I'll tell him." He was very strange, that's all I can tell you, but what a great performer. I got to tell you a Marty Robbins story. When I started as a disc jockey, all of the records were like 2.5 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And back in 1958, you didn't have any tape recorders or any of that. And I'm working midnight to 8 in the morning, and if you got to go to the bathroom, it's pretty tough in 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But then Marty Robbins releases El Paso, and it's over 4 minutes long. And there were more disc jockeys went to the bathroom to El Paso than any song in history, I promise you.
There was a lot of songs like that back in the day. I know you had like Don McLean's American Pie, and there was quite a few songs like that where you could put those on. You could go have a smoke or have go to the bathroom or whatever.
Well, with Marty, when the guy got a deep burning pain in his chest, you knew it was time to wipe your bottom back.
That's great. That's great. Tell me a little bit about Dolly Parton.
Well, I went to, you'll recognize this name. I was such a Dolly Parton fan, and she was with Porter Wagoner at the time, and she was making $500 a week with Porter. So I went to Porter's agent, Candy Rice, and I said, "I'd like to buy some dates on Porter Wagoner." He says, "Well, Bob," he said, "you know that Porter is very busy." I said, "Yes, I know that." And he said, "How many dates would you like?" I said, 100. He said, "I think we could work that out." So I bought those dates. So the first date out, Porter's on stage, and the only time I could talk to Dolly was when Porter was on stage. And she came into the dressing room, and she says, "I'm leaving Porter." I said, "Oh, my God." She says, "I would like for you to manage me." I said, "Oh, my God," again. And so she left Porter, and I took her management, and it was a very difficult time. Porter was really angry. They had a publishing company together, So she couldn't write any music and write it down, because if she did, it would have to go into that publishing company. And I remember we met one time in a hotel room, and she sang a bunch of songs to me that she had not written down. She was just keeping. But then one day, after a year or so, she called me and said, I can't take it anymore. I'm getting a lot of pressure from the people in Nashville, having a West Coast manager. And I said, I understand completely, sweetie. I do. About a year later, she called me, and we met again, and she asked me to manage her again. And I went home and discussed it with my wife at the time. And I just decided that it wasn't the right thing. And so, like an idiot, I said, thank you, but no thank you. Then I was producing the Tony Tennille one-hour talk variety show. And Jane Fonda was on the show. 9 to 5 had just come out. And I said some things, not in mean-spirited by any sense. I told Jane some things I shouldn't have told. And Dolly and I had a falling out. And I can tell you honestly, man, that that's the only person in my life that I feel so bad that I would love to be able to talk to her and say I'm sorry. But she sold out the Hollywood Bowl last year. Not too bad at all, 18,000 people. She's an incredible human being. She's a sweetheart and so talented. But she and Barbara Mandrell at the same time. Barbara couldn't write a note, but she could play 5 instruments.
Yeah.
And Dolly, she could write beautiful music, played a little bit of guitar. So it was kind of different managing the two girls. They both went on and had successful television shows. And if I contributed anything to their careers, I hope I did. I'm proud.
Well, there's an interesting connection between Merle Haggard and Barbara Mandrell in that Norm Hamlet, who was Haggard's steel player almost from day one, taught Barbara how to play steel guitar. Yeah. And I think that the drummer, Biff Adams, if I heard right, he passed away the other day. He passed away, yes, not too long ago. Mark Erie passed away this year as well.
But I heard, too, the piano player, yeah.
Yeah, and Dennis Romack is still with us. He would have been from that era that you were working with, and I talked to him quite a bit. He lives out in California and happily retired and doing well. Good.
Yeah, the band, they were great. Norm Hamlet, I guess he's still around, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Norm is still. I talk to Norm usually about once a week. He is still playing and playing well. He's been playing with a gentleman by the name of Mario Carboni and doing quite a bit of shows with him. And we're doing some recording. And he and his wife, Pat, are living in Bakersfield, and he's doing great. I talk to Norm just about every week.
Well, you tell him I said hi, please.
I will. He'll probably hear this interview because
he's a real gentleman.
He is. He will probably hear this interview because he does listen to my show quite a bit. So I'm sure he'll be happy to know that you're on the show with me tonight.
Yeah.
Great people.
And, Haggard's band, they were fun. Don Markham, the horn player. But it was fun time. Ronnie Reno was in the band at one time. Trying to think who else. Good guy.
Yeah, Bobby Wayne would have been there at that time, I think. And of course, Merle had a lot of the original Texas Playboys with him. Eldon Shamblin, Tiny Moore, Johnny Gimble. And, the band kind of expanded at different times, as we talked about earlier, with him doing the Dixieland stuff or the Western swing stuff. So the band would kind of swell. It was probably quite a task to put all those people on the road at that time.
It was fun. And you're right, though. When the Bob Wills thing came, here came Tiny and Eldon and all those guys, and they were wonderful. I had such a wonderful time as I look back. On my country music time, it's more important to me than the Beatle time, quite frankly.
Well, country music people are great, and I've been blessed to get to know a lot of these people we've talked about, and they are very genuine, down-to-earth, good people, and you feel uplifted when you're around them,
Did you ever work with Gordon Lightfoot?
No, I have not. I was actually supposed to meet him, and there was an award show in Pigeon Forge, and unfortunately that got canceled this year, so I didn't have the chance.
I booked three dates on Gordon Lightfoot in Phoenix and two other Texas towns, and I remember on the third night he said to me, "How'd you do, Bob?" I said, "I lost $10,000." I said, "But it was my fault." I said, "I just didn't promote it right. It's my fault." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." A week later, I get a check in the mail for $10,000.
Wow.
Now, good grief, Charlie Brown. Man, you talk about quality.
That's for sure. Gordon Lightfoot is a huge legend in the state of Michigan, obviously from the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald song.
Yes, yeah. Now, you're in what part of Michigan?
I am in the northern Lower Peninsula. I'm in Traverse City, Michigan.
Okay. I was born in Flint. You know that.
Yes, I read that. Yep.
Yeah, my parents were the hillbillies from Missouri, and when the Depression came along, all the hillbillies moved to Michigan to make cars, and the war came along, and all the hillbillies moved to California to make airplanes. And so I had my second birthday in California, but I was born in Flint.
Wow.
Where you don't drink the water, I understand. But
yeah, it's kind of interesting down there.
Yeah.
Well, you've had so many different careers. You've worn so many hats, and of course, we have talked about your music stuff. But I remember as growing up, watching you on the Newlywed Game, Card Sharks. I still love Card Sharks.
Me too.
One of my favorite games. And you were the Tournament of Roses host for so many years, and you've won
38 years. Yeah.
38 years. You've won 9 Emmys.
Card Sharks were just a matter. Remember the two models, Lacey and Susanna?
Oh yeah, very well.
Yeah. Lacey is the person that chooses all of the contestants on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and has for years.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding. Wow, that's really something. Well, I think you, if I'm not mistaken, you hold the record of being the longest running game show host. Is that right?
Well, I did a Newlywed Game after the year 2000 so that I could say I did the same format, original programming for 5 decades. And, but, I had a great time. I've had so many wonderful, wonderful times in my career, both in the music and the television business, that I am so blessed. And now I'm married to an incredibly wonderful, wonderful woman, and we have a little boy who just turned 17, 6 foot tall. My wife, Deborah, is the number one wedding planner in all of Southern California. She has a company called Bella Vita Events. And, I'll tell you what I'm doing now, too. Are you on Central Time or Eastern Time?
I'm on Eastern Time.
Okay. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if your folks would log in on their telephone, it's an app, to Let's, L-E-T-S, .bingo. Let's.bingo. And you play bingo with me, and it would be 6 o'clock your time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it's free. I give away $100, and I tell all kinds of stories, and we just have more fun than you're supposed to have. And we had some winners. We had a winner in England and one in Australia and one in Poland. So the audience is building. But I tell a lot of stories, country music and rock and roll, and I have more fun than you're supposed to have, I guess. But it's Let's.bingo, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. It'll be 6 o'clock your time, and you play it on your phone.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'll have to log into that. I'll make sure, folks, and put that on our Facebook page for My Kind of Country as well.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we talked about your the Beatles show that you're doing. You're also doing a traveling Newlywed Game too, right?
No, it's a traveling game show.
Okay.
It's called Hollywood's Greatest Game Shows. I play 9 different games. Newlywed is one of them. And at the end of the show, someone has a chance to win $1 million.
Wow.
And gosh, we would like for them to win it because we buy insurance for it every date, see? I would love to see somebody win it. It would be so, and people have come so close. But we play a lot of casinos with that. Gambling people are game show people, I found out.
Oh, sure.
But, we play Newlywed Game, we play Card Sharks, we play our version of these shows, and we play 9 different, and then some games that we have made up ourselves, but it's a lot of fun. So I have that show, and I have the Beatles show, and I play bingo, and I'm very blessed. That's all I can tell you, Matt.
And you are a very highly sought-after public speaker as well.
Well, I used to be, but I kind of pulled back from that, and it was difficult to sell when you do a frivolity show like the Newlywed Game. The serious convention people are not sure they want to hire you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very obvious to me that you are not only a very well-educated man, but you've experienced so much in this world and done so many things that I think you're an absolute treasure of information, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit starstruck. I think it's just really cool that I'm sitting here talking to Bob Eubanks.
A friend of mine, 95 years old, and another friend of his got him a hot date. And she said, "I'm here to give you super romance." He said, "I'll take the soup."
I love it. Well, folks, we're going to take and play some of the artists that we talked about with Bob tonight that he worked with for so many years. And we're going to play some of their big songs for you and in tribute to Bob Eubanks. And again, folks, please go to bobeubanks.com. And also, we'll put the information on our Facebook page about the bingo game. It's let's.bingo, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll have that on our page. So I encourage you to check that out. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it is, and it's free. We have a sponsor, so, everybody. So it's not gambling when it's free. That means that children can play, too. So
awesome.
It's just a lot of fun, really.
It sure sounds like it. Well, Bob, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to talk with us today, and I enjoyed hearing your stories, and I hope we can do this again sometime because I'm sure there's a lot of other great things you could tell.
Well, keep your mask on and call me whenever you need me, okay?
All right, that sounds great. That is the great Bob Eubanks on My Kind of Country, and here are some of these great artists that we talked about with Bob. We're going to play for you right now as My Kind of Country continues. Bob, thank you again.
God bless. Thank you.